My 4-year-old loves monster trucks and cars, and the last thing he wants to do at 8 o'clock is put those down and go to bed. And so I can tell him, hey, science says you need to be in bed by 8 o'clock and you need to get X number of hours of sleep for optimal brain development.
That ain't going to work, Josh. Yeah.
Right. But it's a great evidence-based intervention. And I could say, yeah, I'm a great parent. He gets what science says is the optimal amount of sleep every night, whether he likes it or not. Or I can say, hey, let's race these monster trucks back to your bed. And he's like, let's go. And so it's about connecting those 2 points, the experience and the evidence-based care.
Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with Thomas Miller. Are you tired of your tweens, teens, and young adults' negative behaviors and poor choices holding you emotionally hostage, controlling your family, and ruling your life? If you answered yes, then you are in the right place. This podcast is a community for courageous parents just like you who come here to gain effective tools, skills, and take action so they can change their tween, teen, or young adult's life and improve their family's future. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. Today, we are joined by Josh Gardner. I'm so excited to have him. Josh is the CFO of the Hope Group and Executive Director of Havenwood Academy, which is a long-term residential treatment center for teen girls with trauma histories. He's also the father of two, an endurance athlete, and he is equally as obsessed as I am about improving how mental health care is delivered and provided, and he's always trying to up his game and improve the process of how Havenwood treats their clients. So welcome, Josh. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Thomas. It's a pleasure to be on your show today.
Cool. Did I miss anything? Did I cover it all?
No, I think that's great.
Cool. Tell us a little more about this endurance athlete, adjective that I said about you. What does that mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, endurance sports have been a thematic element in my life since I was 12 years old that have just continually pushed me towards high quality living and great choices in my mind. So when I was 12 years old, I saw my cousin race the 1600 meter in a track meet. He was a year older than me, and it just clicked for me in my mind. I said, that's what I'm meant to do. And so I immediately went and tried out for track and had an okay seventh grade track season. But starting in eighth grade, I really thrived. And actually my whole eighth grade year, I went undefeated in cross country and track, and didn't go undefeated in high school. However, I had some great coaches, was able to progress there and eventually get a scholarship to run in a Division I university on their track and cross country teams. And so track and endurance running have actually been delivered some of the 6 R's from Bruce Perry's neurosequential model. Funny enough, I didn't know about the model until, 10 years ago as I started to work in treatment. However, I learned for myself that I had been experiencing those 6 R's, rhythmic, repetitive, rewarding, relational experiences, really my entire life through sports, and in my case, through endurance sports.
Cool. Well, today's topic is going to be about work-life integration, how to be a present dad, right, amidst obviously everything you're trying to accomplish in terms of your work career, obviously also as an endurance athlete. One of the things, though, I just want to say that's super cool about Josh, and what actually drew me to Josh, is that, and you could speak to this further, Josh is equally obsessed, as I said in the intro or the beginning here, with really raising the standard of care. We don't have too much time to go into the mangled healthcare system and why the mental health system is broken in this country. But Josh and his group and Havenwood really strive to give the clients, right, the teenage females who have a lot going on, right, that you could speak to in their histories and their backgrounds and how that crops up today, a real unsurpassed, treatment experience. And the coolest thing is that Josh and his team is leading, to create treatment that doesn't have to be solely impinged upon by, whether or not it's private pay. And I love, your mission and your heart toward ensuring that you do the best with what you can, you and your team do the best with what you can to really create a corrective emotional experience for your clients, irrespective of, again, whether it's privately funded or third-party reimbursed or what have you. But if you could just speak to a little bit about that mission and why that's so near and dear to your heart, that'd be great. And just one little quick clarifier for folks listening, and I will have down the line a consultant, therapeutic consultant, and we can talk more about levels of care. But a residential treatment would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, in your case, right? You're looking at least 12 months, correct?
Yeah, our average time for graduation at Havenwood is about 14 months.
14 months, right? So just for folks listening, we're not talking about short-term care as in a quick stint, that's basically about crisis and safety monitoring that might happen on the inpatient level. And we're not talking about an outpatient, and we're not talking about partial hospitalization here, but we're talking about, as Josh had just intimated. So tell everybody a little bit more about Havenwood and why it's, so important to you and so impactful. And again, I so love, just what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, so I am an accountant by training. I have an accounting degree and an MBA. So I'm not the typical guy running a treatment center. But what I learned is that there's research indicating patient outcomes are highly correlated with their perceived experience. So often we get into this mind space of what is the evidence-based practice? What is the scientific intervention that this patient needs? And in the process, we can disregard their perception of the process. And it turns out that their perception of the process is highly impactful on the long-term outcome during their treatment experience. So a great book, if you haven't read it, 9.5 Things Disney Would Do Differently If They Ran a Hospital. So that's been an impactful book for me. And if you think, what would Disney do differently? Well, they would try and create wow experiences all over the place. And it would be on the first phone call. It would be the first day on campus. It would be in every therapy session. And so we've gone through our customer journey dozens and dozens of times, evaluating all of the little points of friction that a patient might have in treatment where it doesn't feel benevolent, it doesn't feel fun, it doesn't feel like they're being honored. And we've tried to eliminate those pain points. So our process has been as much of a process where we incorporate evidence-based practice as one where we look to identify factors that are primarily related to their perception of the journey and focus on those as much as the evidence-based practices that we implement.
Again, we're here to talk about work-life integration and how to be a present dad, and we're going to get into all that. But just the idea of standing inside the customer's shoes is so important to me. And you're describing trauma-informed care because, it's not about, like you're saying, it's not about what we believe or some, theoretical model that's evidence-based or not, tells us would be the outcome. It's ostensibly how is this client, right, moving through treatment, and our every interaction with the staff. Is it a moment of truth? That was something I used to do all the time when I was a founder myself, is used to ask my staff, in meetings, pretty much every meeting, what was a moment of truth that occurred this week, or what was a moment that was not in alignment, right, with what we espoused. If we're espousing to be, provide an unsurpassed treatment experience and to be unflappable and to have the highest degree of professionalism, decorum, strength base, whatever that is, if our clients are not feeling that week in and week out vis-a-vis every touch point, that's not a moment of truth. So that is a book, by the way, Moments of Truth. That's about a Scandinavian airline. That's a good one too. But I haven't read the 9.5 Things Disney Would Do Differently. I will definitely check that out because that experience of wow is so important for teens and or adults and or anybody, right? I mean, that idea of someone being able to wipe off the shame and the film of trauma or the film of going through the behavioral health care model that often beats up clinicians and then by proxy beats up, right, the clients themselves. And now to feel like they can drop those shoulders and be whole again and be treated, with kindness vis-a-vis, yes, evidence-based outcomes. But like you said, it has to be the touch point, has to be the client's experience. That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, we're on a parenting podcast here. And you think about something as simple as something I deal with every night is getting my 4-year-old to bed.
Mm-hmm.
My 4-year-old loves monster trucks and cars. And the last thing he wants to do at 8 o'clock is put those down and go to bed. And so I can tell him, hey, science says you need to be in bed by 8 o'clock and you need to get X number of hours of sleep for optimal brain development.
That's
like that would be a good evidence-based.
That ain't gonna work, Josh. Yeah.
Right, but it's a great evidence-based intervention, and I could say, yeah, I'm a great parent.
Right.
He gets what science says is the optimal amount of sleep every night, whether he likes it or not. Right. Yeah. Or I can say, hey, let's race these monster trucks back to your bed. Mm-hmm. And he's like, let's go. Right. And mm-hmm. and so it's about connecting those 2 points, the experience and the evidence-based care. And of course that can intertwine with a lot of parenting applications there as well.
Yeah.
And, one of my notes I took for the podcast in advance, just a personal goal that I have is to have fewer pet peeves as a parent and try to reduce the number of things that irritate me, because a lot of the situations in life and in parenting we get hung up on, but they're not really a right or wrong. It's like people can load the dishwasher with the plates on the bottom or the bowls on the bottom. It doesn't matter, right? I don't need to have that extra friction point in my life. We often do the same thing in treatment. We have these sacred cows where it must be like this. And we could list dozens of examples. Many of those isms end up being situations where we disallow the patient from participating in activities that are meaningful and enjoyable to them, or that artificially restrict their freedom. And we do the same thing in parenting. Mm-hmm. It goes both ways. So lowering the number of pet peeves that we have in our own minds, that intellectual hang up, can allow us to focus on the really important components of treatment, of parenting, work-life balance, whatever it might be.
Yeah. No, it's a great segue. But the piece about, just to go back to treatment for a second, because for those who don't know, I have been in the space for a long time and was the clinical director of a wilderness therapy program, family wellness director at an elite addiction treatment center, founder as well. And so I've seen so many different levels of care. I was director of the Center for Hope in Darien, Den for Grieving Kids. So I've seen so many different levels of care. And the thing that just drew me to Josh was a post you made about a connection you had. I'm forgetting, what's the name of the company that's providing the mattresses?
Yeah, Purple Mattresses.
Purple, which I know those. I've seen them. They're actually pretty cool. And the coolest thing is because I know a lot of your clients are, correct me if I'm wrong, they're vis-a-vis insurance and third-party reimbursement or subsidized in some way. And so again, it's not a private pay facility, and yet to know that your clients are getting sleep, the most fundamental thing, the only way teens can restore neurotransmitters is when they're sleeping. And, it's just such a no-brainer. And I won't, say anything disparaging about this first clinic I worked at, but literally I never forget, I was a supervisor. I became the supervisor of this clinic, and it didn't have any windows. And it was a child and adolescent clinic with no windows. And I said to the director at the time when I first arrived as a supervisor, I said, hey, do we have a budget for some cool little nice lights, right? Because as you know, classic therapist lighting, right, is much more subtle and warm and welcoming than fluorescent light. And he said no. And so literally this place had no windows and had fluorescent light. And somehow the clinicians that I was supposed to lead were supposed to be as present as humanly possible. So it just was so awesome to see you reaching across, aisles, so to speak. And I'm sure developing a strategic relationship there and just doing I'm sure, great networking to achieve that outcome for your clients. I mean, it's just like such a great win for everyone. And again, is another example of trauma-informed care. So I love that. And I love the pet peeve thing for parents. And I love the thing about racing the cars. I think of parallel play there, and I think of attachment. And, I think of gargling your child's worldview, right? Gargling your child's experience. And kids, speak and play. There's a great book called Shut Up and Play, which is actually for clinicians. How do you bring that to your parenting? Josh said offline, you said, I don't know what it was, but I don't have any credible outcomes. And Josh was speaking about the fact that, his kids are not 25 and didn't all graduate yet from Harvard or Yale or wherever. We don't need the credible outcome of that the proof is in the pudding yet, but there's a lot of intentionality I know that you're bringing to your parenting. So what are some of the things similar to how you're trying to reduce your pet peeves and expand your kind of insulation between your child and your button board? What are some other ways you're really trying to push connection, attachment, and that drive how you think of work-life integration?
Yeah, for me, Thomas, my default as a human is I want to be productive. And so this makes it challenging for me. I have a natural difficulty getting down on my children's level often. Like that doesn't come natural to me because my preference would be to keep working out or working all day long. Like for me, business is the ultimate video game. And so it's pretty hard for me to set it down, not because I'm addicted to it, but because I'm having a blast trying to create a beautiful experience for the employees that work here, for the customers we serve, for all the stakeholders. So when I get home, I actually have to use some of my process and task focused gifts to help me engage with my kids. And so I'm a big fan of James Clear's Atomic Habits. And I actually have one of his habit trackers. And you can buy these on Amazon for like $3 or something. And one of the habits I have is hug my children. And I need to make sure that I have that deliberate physical contact every day and spend a moment close in physical proximity. And that really helps me. And I can go back and look and see how did I do in the month of March? What's my hug rate, right? Out of 25 days this month so far, I'm probably at something like 95% because I have that task. It's on my to-do list. And that puts me into that position, and then I'm able to engage. And often it's about setting up the context and the situation for me personally, where I can have those kinds of experiences. And so I just have a recurring reminder on my iPhone. And on Saturdays and Sundays, I do this thing called Dad Hour. And my goal is to have 1 hour of whatever they want to do. If they want to go play in the sandbox, if they want to jump on the trampoline. My 7-year-old, we've got a basketball hoop. He loves to play horse. And so we're out there playing basketball together, whatever it might be. But it's kind of this win-win. And this might sound crazy, but for me, I get to check something off my checklist, which feels good. But it puts me in a context that my kids need and a moment for connection.
I love this podcast for so many reasons, because as much as there are podcasts out there about parenting that are a lot of woo-woo and rainbow sprinkles, and I try to be very technical, tactical, and really give the parents listening tips, tools, strategies in real time. You just did that. You just did that. And I appreciate your vulnerability of outing yourself as, again, like you said, it's not that you're this workaholic and this is your addiction. It's more that this is your Fortnite or this is your whatever. And you dork out about, program development and innovation and love that. And so to have those boundaries, those stop gaps that force attachment, that's beautiful. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that is, as you said, a win-win, not because you view that as an encumbrance, but because that's the way in for you. And if left to your own devices, you may not be as innately cognizant around the need for that hug, now that you're now tracking it and utilizing your own skill set or value proposition in a way, it's benefiting you and benefiting your kids and creating a secure attachment. There's so many people that probably don't hug their kids as much as you're hugging your kids, even if it's a fake it till you make it. And I'm not saying it is a fake it till you make it. It's more of a helpful accountability measure. And as you know, I don't know all the stats off the top of my head, but I think in the book, actually, Atomic Habits, he talks about how if you state a goal, it's like you have 30-something% likelihood of achieving it. Or I think if you just have a goal, it's even less. If you write it down, it's like 30-something%. If you tell someone, it jumps to like 50. If you begin to track it, it's something like 80 or 90. So that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. And I love that, again, you have enough self-awareness to recognize that you could, if you weren't aware, you would not necessarily be detached, but that you wouldn't be as proximal or as present or potentially use physical touch as much in a good way if it wasn't for having this kind of overt mechanism that works for you. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, one of my parenting principles for me is to move the goalpost.
Mm-hmm.
The wrong goal is your children behaving. The right goal is you behaving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a parenting principle that I've come up with that speaks to me. One of the other things I track on this habit tracker is, did I stay calm? And so I'm tracking every single day. Did I get frustrated and yell at my kids?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can't check that off that day. And that hurts. Like that for me, I'm like, dang it. I failed that task. And it's as much about being frustrated with my kids, of course, as it is, again, leveraging what for me can be a really task-focused tendency. And what I believe is that allows me to engage with my children in the correct way, but by using the operating system that I was born with in my brain.
Yeah. I think that's an act of love. And I think that's an act of altruism all rolled into one. This past Saturday, I was coaching 2 soccer games and I knew this was going to be a shit show. And I told my oldest that if he cleans the garage had a bunch of stuff. And I said, just take everything. We have these shelves, take everything off the shelves and put them nice and neat against the wall. And because there's a bunch of stuff that has to get donated or potentially upcycled or whatever, or potentially thrown out. We had this beautiful system, of like where things went. And then like now it's just like you pull in from the soccer game or wherever and you just like throw something on these shelves. And now it just looks like we have one giant wall of like a junk drawer. So anyway, I knew it was going to be a crap show. And I told my son, $50 if it's like pretty good. If we pull in and it's like awesome, 75. And if it's like amazing, like everything's perfectly against the wall. So if there's any themes, you can kind of itemize them, but just everything off the shelves, nice and neat, take everything out, sweep. Anyway, we pull up, literally you cannot even drive, like you can't even get into the garage. It looks like we're having a yard sale. There's stuff everywhere. He's wearing sandals, okay, which already kills me because I know like he doesn't even have like the right shoes on and is like not even like, where he has pajamas on. I lose my stuff totally lose my stuff. He didn't start until 12 o'clock. We had left at like 7:30 in the morning. He said he'd start at 9:30. I did not get the check that day, not get the check. What I did do, which I do very well, and there's one of the podcasts, a couple of podcast episodes ago, was called Tear and Repair. I am very good at repairing, very good. I need to be better at the not doing the tearing part. So I love that you're tracking yourself, and I was able to quickly get back into connection with him because I did lose my shit. I did become very focused on the behavior or the outcome. I did personalize, right, and didn't have that nice layer of insulation between my button board and my son. And where I go, which is my own stuff, is I always think of the ROI of this thing. And now we have a 24-year-old living in our basement who hasn't launched. And everything for me is like leaders create more leaders, and always trying to think of, character and values. So, but I love that. Yes, I don't get the check that day, and I do get to feel uncomfortable. And it's good to feel uncomfortable. It's good to feel shame, believe it or not, as much as a society, we're trying to wipe away shame. And as far as treatment, of course, you should remove shame and stigma and allow people, again, to drop those shoulders and to finally feel whole again. But there's nothing wrong with feeling shame when you relapse if you're in recovery. Or there's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
feeling shame when you relapse as a dad and you're trying to create co-regulation, which I pride myself on. And I had this fleeting voice that said, focus on the gain, not the gap of what's currently happening. And sure enough, I focused on the fact that it was 5:30 and I was exhausted, and I knew this. My wife and I would have to get involved and we'd be up to 9:30. I mean, out there cleaning, which is exactly what happened. But yeah, dude, I think you're doing a great job. Like, why not hack the hell out of your DNA and use it for the betterment of your children and the deepening of an attachment? That's so cool.
On the work-life balance thing and just I'm sure many people could perceive me as a workaholic. That might be a label that they might use with me. On the other hand, I make my kids breakfast 7 days a week, and I take my son to school every morning, and I eat dinner with my family every day. And then I tuck my kids into bed every night. And then we're running 6 businesses at the Hope Group, and I'm in charge of the day-to-day at Havenwood. We've got 170 employees at Havenwood. It's a big operation. And so for me, it's about finding that 80-20 principle. Sometimes the time is the 80-20. And the time, my 7-year-old, his love language is quality time. And so I have to invest the time with him. Then within that context, though, there are going to be these key factors. Like, we know eating dinner as a family is a highly important, statistically demonstrated to be highly important in family cohesion and outcomes with your children. And so that has to be a non-negotiable for me. And so my routine ends up being kind of a little work first thing in the morning. And I've got my podcast in while I'm working out, and you're stacking things. When you're trying to function at a really high level, managing your career and your family, you're often stacking things. So you don't work out and listen to music every time. It's like you work out and listen to a book because you need to sharpen the saw too, if you're going to show up professionally. And often I'll do that with my kids in the car. I'll play a podcast while I'm driving my 7-year-old to school, and he'll ask me questions about some leadership podcast or a book I'm listening to. And interestingly, I remember growing up listening to talk radio. My mom would listen to talk radio. We'd be driving to piano lessons or something, and my mom would have talk radio on, and I'd be like hearing these political issues, people wrestling with political issues. And for me, I remember being 10, 11 years old, but I was comprehending that and engaging intellectually. And we underestimate the age at which children can engage in those high level topics. And so giving opportunities to do that and to share the experience with you. Another thing I'll do is working out. We have a home gym. So for me, it doesn't really work to go to the gym. Like, an hour away from home can be pretty challenging. There are times when I'm just hitting a set, a 15-second set of deadlifts in between flipping pancakes in the morning. Flip the pancakes, go hit a set. Flip the pancakes, hit a set, right? And so you can integrate these things. Then your kids get to watch you. Often they're in there in the gym hanging on the pull-up bar. So it ends up, you can turn what most people see as maybe like selfish time for a parent. Oh, you're away from your kids or something. And maybe there are situations where that could be the case, but you can integrate. Like, I love the idea of work-life integration. You can integrate these things so that you can parent, demonstrate good habits, and connect with your children all at the same time.
100%. And your kids are always watching. They're always watching, right? And wherever big feet go, little feet are soon to follow. And the running joke in my house always was that I was like this weird workout at the park guy, because every time I'd be chasing them around the park, I would then rip off some chin-ups, some pull-ups, some dips. A children's playground is like the greatest gym. I mean, you can get every single thing done there. And as my kids got older, they're like, "Oh God, Dad's going to start working out now." Like, "Oh shit," They're like, "No, Dad, stop working out." I mean, it's the same thing that you're saying. It is as much as I again, we want to have, I think, this horrible Pinterest hallmark idea that everything's innate and not, hackable. You're 100% right. I don't hear anything in there as someone who is not present and has some freneticism and is checked out somewhere and looking at the spreadsheet. You are taking care of multiple verticals, like you just described, in terms of those businesses, but in terms of your children. And I always say that for the parents that I'm coaching who are in the program, look, I'm like, never ever is everything going to be in the black. Like your sleep is never going to be in the black. Your sex life, you and your partner is not going to be in the black. Your kids, wellness per se, mental health is not going to be 100% in the black. But we have to make sure that when something's in the red, we have to zoom in on that, right? And give that value, give that attention. And so you're trying to do a really good job. I don't know what the color is between red and black, I guess, but you're trying to do a really good job of getting like a B+ across the board, And my therapist, I never forget, way back when, oh my God, this was like 2008 in Lake Placid. I was the clinical director of a wilderness therapy program. And how I was 28 and trying to do that job, by the way, is crazy. With my dad had just died a couple of weeks earlier, and my grandmother in the same week, and my wife left for grad school. It was a nutty time. That's a whole other episode. But he used to say to me all the time, like, Thomas, you're getting an A+++, as a clinical director. And he used to say all the time, even though he was a very seasoned clinician, he's like, you're probably a better therapist than I am, but you're getting a D in self-care. You're getting a D, potentially as a husband. And that stuck with me forever. And so I love these hacks that you're describing, habit stacking. Again, not as some like arbitrary random, like, oh, I'm flipping a pancake. What should I do? I don't know. Drop on the floor and do a burpee. But you're getting out of this idea of perfectionism, which I love. Joy McAdams, who's our guest last week, she has this thing on LinkedIn called Fitness Fridays. And it's always like anything's better than nothing. That's kind of the message. And I agree with that completely. And so for you to not only be creating an attachment, a culture of connection to body, to mind, to spirit, and showing them, right, where they can be, like you said, hanging on the pull-up bars and doing cool stuff. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful opportunity for connection. That's lovely.
Yeah, one of the thoughts I wrote down in preparation for this is in terms of work-life integration and connecting with your family and managing multiple goals and dreams and needs and desires simultaneously, is the idea that most people aren't willing to only put one drop in the bucket each day. And they feel like they've got to fill up the bucket every day or not do it at all. And just as you mentioned with Joy, this all or nothing mindset can prevent you from pursuing multiple domains at the same time. But I really don't think parents have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
You often do see people say, I'll get fit again after my kids are grown up, or something like that. And we need to be fit to demonstrate fitness for our children. That's as important for their longevity, for their quality of life, for their happiness and anxiety and depression reduction. Health is not a nice to have. Health is a need to have. You need to be healthy. You can't be fully present as a parent if you aren't meeting your physiological needs. Mm-hmm. And that's, ties into Havenwood a little bit. One of our operating principles is environment of care and that quality of sleep with the purple mattresses. We really believe that we need to address sleep and many other physiological factors if we want to get to the underlying mental health issues. And so as humans, we need to be eliminating all of these disruptive factors from our life so we can peel back the layers. And that's what allows us to get to the core of, real issues. So often people are feeling depressed or anxious, and it turns out if they get 8 hours of sleep, if they get, 150 grams of protein a day and they walk for 30 minutes, that a lot of those depressive symptoms disappear. Mm-hmm. And so it turns out they don't have a mental health issue that is not able to be resolved outside of the lifestyle factors. We could actually have been treating them with simply engaging in a healthy way in their life.
And that's free. You know, it cracked me up during COVID. I'm not getting political here about, this is not a conversation about vaccine, no vaccine, et cetera. But what cracked me up during COVID was, you know, it was all about, right, washing your hands, social distancing, vaccines. That was kind of the major strategy. Not once did I hear anyone say, hey, a lot of folks who are really being affected are overweight, and there's a cardiovascular element here and a lifestyle element here. Maybe we should go like walk. Maybe we should go hike. Maybe we should get out in the woods. We lived in the Berkshires. Berkshires is Western Mass, and very, you know, a lot of space, very rural comparatively to the other side of the state. And so when we were going through that whole process, you know, we were just walking, we were just hiking. Like our lifestyle actually went up during COVID, like, you know, whereas other folks were shut in and overeating and stressed out, and understand, you know, I get why they were comfort eating. But we were in the Berkshires, so we're like, all right, we're just gonna like go hike. And it was like awesome to be on a trail, and you would, you know, walk by someone and not, you know, be right in their face. And there were so many people that were hiking. And so it was very interesting to see how people left to, you know, kind of their own ancient wisdom were like, yeah, we need to get outside, right? We need to get the sun. We need to get, you know, it cracks me up. There's treatment centers that do, what is it called? There's a very specific, I believe it's a Japanese word, forest bathing. It has a name, but it cracks me up because people spend thousands of dollars for like forest bathing, you know, like they go to some bougie like ranch to go forest bathe. And it's like, that's called hiking. Like that's like literally free. Like just go to a trailhead, you know, but I'm with you. Like it does drive me nuts that, you know, when I get, you know, of course I coach parents who move through the Four Peaks Parents Program, but I've had forever a private practice since 2002. And so, you know, when I get a young adult who, let's say, is young adult, teen, tween, whatever, they're sleep deprived, they're staying up to 12:30, 1 o'clock. They are also going back and forth on Snap, you know, and being keyed up and reactive there. There may or may not be any kind of history. And yes, they may have underneath all that OCD or anxiety or panic disorder or some depression, but they're not exercising, they're not involved in a protective factor, and there's the detached family relationship. So it's like, you know, and I'm supposed to like help this person, you know, for 1 hour a week, which of course I did provide help and value, and they're on 7 different meds. So, you know, that ability to really slow the fudge down that you're speaking of and really get back to some ancient wisdoms. And I love the idea of the family dinner as a staple. I love the idea that you're also making breakfast in the morning. I do the same thing. We have the same morning routine, and there's definitely times that I'm guilty of it being a little bit stressed out and a rush and got to get to school and beat the traffic. But there are other times where I do take a second and I look out my window and I might find 5 things that are blue, or I might just take 10 breaths, or really be mindful of the warmth of the tea or the cool, you know, the coolness of the glass of water. And then I'm way more regulated. And then I'm going to bring a lot more value. And that regulation creates, right, co-regulation. So no, I don't think you're a workaholic at all, man. Like the fact that you have those non-negotiables is great. And in fact, you're almost like biohacking, you know what I mean, yourself to create this attunement that is also going to, from an epigenetic standpoint, like think about what are the genes that are being sent up or down vis-a-vis your kids, because you're trying so hard to get that X in that Excel spreadsheet or the tracker that says, I didn't lose my shit today, you know, or I did hug my kids today, which sends them, as you know, oxytocin, you know, when you're giving that hug, right? So I think there's a lot of brilliance here, man. Like don't hate on your system. Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, you know, I think it doesn't take as much time as you might think to get it all done if you're willing to be very decisive. Often you already know the right answer, and then you spend minutes or hours negotiating with your brain on whether you should take the first step. And so you get out of bed and you get on your phone and you're like, man, should I work out today? I know I planned it last night, but man, I'm not feeling good. And you have to get in that habit or create that system. And, you know, at Havenwood, we try and create systems where the easiest way, the path of least resistance, is the correct way. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, you have to do that same thing. how do I create a system in my home where the path of least resistance is the path of attunement and connection and high expectation and high support? And you put those check marks in your way as obstacles, where the kind of the obstacle is the way, if you're familiar with that book, book on Stoicism.
Yep.
We need to create environments where, as we proceed through our normal routine, we naturally just check these off. And so it might be, for years, actually, I rode my bike to work. And I lived close enough at the time where riding my bike was actually just like 2 or 3 minutes slower than driving my car. So it was perfect. So I automatically was getting an extra, 30 or 40 minutes of exercise in baseline every single day. And then you save the cost of wear and tear on your vehicle and stuff. So there are infinite ways. It's kind of like take the stairs, not the elevator approach to life. You both get up to the third floor at the same time anyway. And then the one who took the elevator, you just spent, a little bit more time getting exposed to professional marketers on Facebook. And now you probably bought something on Amazon on the way up. And the other person, you climbed 3 flights of stairs and you reduced your blood sugar and you're less likely to become insulin resistant and you're stronger, then you feel accomplished and you got that blood flowing. So we can make those decisions throughout our days. Like those decisions pop up multiple times every single hour. And so what people end up trying to do, though, is segment their life. The morning is for working out. My 9 to 5 is just for working. And then from 5 to 10 is just for my family. But that for me is not a strategy that works well, because I've found you can layer all of these activities on top of each other and engage in them simultaneously. I've got a little desk treadmill and a stand desk. So often I'll put in a couple miles walking on my desk if I'm just doing email or whatever it might be. Then I go home and I've got my 10,000 steps, right? So there are so many opportunities to integrate. I do think for me that habit tracker has been perhaps one of the biggest game changers, though, on having an accountability process, because whatever you choose to measure is what will improve in your life.
If someone's listening to this and being like, wow, this is way too scientific and not so heart-centered and innate, that's their perspective. And that might be, something that just happens for them on a more innate level, and more power to them. That being said, what I really love, because when I look at a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, if I'm coaching a parent of a tween, I know what that kid looks like as a young adult. I know the ROI of that. And there's so much brilliance in what you're saying, because yes, you're talking about like warding off dementia. Yes, you're talking about warding off, diabetes, because as you know, right, almost every, 85% of all diseases are lifestyle based driven, or driven by lifestyle, right? I think I have that right. Someone can fact check me, but it's up there. But the point is, from a mental health standpoint, I truly believe, right, as you had intimated, even if someone organically is predisposed toward schizophrenia, toward bipolarity, toward alcoholism, toward addiction, toward whatever, without a doubt, right, the degree to which the family is modeling and creating a culture that child is steeped in and bathing in, a culture of, say, wellness that does push toward, again, not perfection, not Pinterest here, people, but the idea that, yes, sleep is medicine, right? The woods is medicine, art is medicine, connection is medicine, hugging your kiddos is medicine, listening is medicine, attunement's medicine, repairing is medicine, right? Because again, we're not going to be perfect. We are going to tear. We are going to lose our crap. When our teen is, oh my God, has a PhD in button pushing and is doing everything, basically feels like to kill us, But there's an ROI to all of these things. And when you see a child that can set foot on a stage and sing, or you see a kid that can, miss the game-winning shot, and yes, they're upset and they cry and they're in their feelings healthily and they express that, and they don't need to numb out immediately with drinking or drugging or what have you. All of those things, there's a positive compound effect of some of these things that you're describing, and the fact that you have that as kind of within you, right? It sounds very innate that it's it is about this integrated lifestyle. It is about making sure that you're not creating these dichotomies, within your day, and that you're just choosing to do something that probably isn't even that hard, like you said, but at first glance, right, or first blush, it may seem hard, but because it's something you've established over time, it's patternistic, it now becomes ingrained and interwoven. And like you said, you're getting so much more done, and there's so many more touch points, and those touch points are being maximized because there is a level of intentionality as opposed to a carelessness there. At the end of the day, I mean, this has never changed. I don't think it ever will change. Is the degree to which we are securely attached to our kids is the greatest protective factor that we can provide, irrespective of, I mean, every study under the sun proves that, that is the biggest asset a child has, is a secure, healthy attachment with some adult. And I know that's what you're trying to do at Havenwood, right? Is to create these second families for these girls, right? And these super healthy role models, these super healthy people who become corrective emotional experiences, who become what are called transitional objects. I've been the uncle, I've been the whoever. This girl I worked with a little while ago, which is a sad comment, but is also a beautiful thing, said, "I'm the healthiest male she's ever met." And she had trauma history as well. And she worked through so much with me therapeutically. She was initially very promiscuous and acting out masochistic toward herself vis-a-vis her own kind of sexual development, and turning against self and viewing herself as bad and ugly and this kind of object to be beaten up. And then she got to a place where she was loving herself. And then she had a recoil for a little while when she actually was with a healthy partner. And now she just shot me an email. She's like killing it. She's actually in a healthy relationship. It's amazing. So, that's the opportunity I think that you're providing at Havenwood is to provide these girls with this opportunity, right, to internalize and then generalize what a healthy family could look like.
You got me thinking about a few different things here. One is self-care. One is permissive versus authoritarian versus authoritative parenting styles, and the idea also of high expectations and high support as a parent. And I think high expectations, absent the high support, can be harmful. And permissive parenting, we know, is suboptimal. And we know that often what parents can tend to do is engage in what they believe is high support parenting in a way which is actually permissive parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so people, I'm thinking about this whole topic about work-life balance and work-life integration and self-care. You often hear people say, "I need more self-care." And so on the way home, they buy soda,
Mm-hmm.
and they go home and they lay on the couch and they eat ice cream and watch TV for the rest of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, "I wonder why I'm not feeling good." And so the self-care that many people choose to engage in, I'm saying self-care with air quotes here, is self-harm. And we need to be really careful that as parents, we do not engage in permissive parenting for our children that ends up not helping them, but harming them. And the high expectation has to exist simultaneously with that high support, but in a sense of high expectation of inputs. When we have a high expectation of outcomes, that can be crushing, because who's defining the outcome? Well, we as the parent are typically defining the outcome. That's maybe a GPA, or maybe that's an outcome in sports, or that's performing in musically, or whatever it may be, social status. The inputs are where we need to focus our efforts as parents in terms of expectation, which is, we expect you to get enough sleep. We expect you to be kind. We expect you to be studious. It's kind of like the Bill Walsh book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As parents, it's one of the most applicable domains in life for that concept is in parenting, where we focus on the inputs exclusively. because they are their own person and they will become their own person. And our job is to be these guides in life, to identify interests, to help expose them to new opportunities and ideas, and then to have high expectations about how they exercise inputs into those processes and interests. And one of the best ways we can do that is by demonstrating high expectations with ourselves as parents and showing them the way. I love the idea that I can show my two boys, you can be successful in your career, you can be successful and present with your family, and you can run multiple marathons every year. And you can go hit a 20-mile or a 30-mile long run on a Saturday morning. And often for me, that means, I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm on the road at 4 a.m. so that I can still be home for the kids during the day. But that's a trade-off that for me that works.
That's I gonna say that's not even a cost. Like, I mean, I have owned my own company since 2000. What is it? 2013. I've always had a private practice since 2004. So I always was a owner of a company. But I have every vacation we've ever been on, my kids will come to the lobby of the hotel or the Airbnb or wherever it is, or the kitchen, and I'm awake before them. And my sister, if she's listening, is gonna kill me for this, but my sister is a union teacher, and she would think that's like, this is where we totally disagree, my sister and I, that's poor boundaries. To me, that's not poor boundaries. That's actually me investing in more presence and more freedom. And so on a Sunday, every Sunday, I'm always, even when I play soccer, I'm always up before everybody. I'm always ripping off some work because I'm obsessed with soccer. And so if it's World Cup, I'm definitely watching the World Cup in the middle of the week. I don't care when the hell it is. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, or whatever that is, so that ability to invest, intentionally and integrate, work into life on the Sunday allows me to integrate life into work during the week. And I agree. I think binary ways of thinking is so unhelpful. And, I love the input conversation that you're shifting away from outcome and more toward process, and helping to kind of drip down a healthy value system that's about lifestyle. Like you said, being studious over getting a 4.0 or something. That binary, very black and white outcome really shaves off maybe the process of your son or daughter or whoever achieving an 82 in a really hard freaking class. I'd rather my kid get an 82 or 84 in a really hard freaking class than know they're going to get the A and mail it in an easier class, and then just solely become a bot trying to get into bot university and trying to reverse engineer everything they do. So I love how much like holistic thinking goes into what could sound, again, rather robotic and ascetic. Again, I think, not that you need me, I don't know, to lawyer up for you or something here, Josh, but I think you have you're not the Tin Man. I think there's so much heart embedded into what you're doing. And great leaders, they do model the way, they do encourage the heart, they do challenge the process of themselves and everyone around them, but they allow other people to challenge their own process. And so I love that you're challenging the listeners here to say, like, yes, we could talk all day long about, I need a Sabbath, I need self-care, I need this, I need that. But then we're ostensibly exporting and abdicating a lot of opportunity for self-care when we're eating crap food, or we're just inane. And, it's like the movie WALL-E, if you haven't seen it, is like the greatest movie. Have you seen WALL-E?
I have, yeah.
That is
Great
like,
movie.
the movie's insane. I mean, I've watched that movie like 3 times because it's not even here. I mean, it's been here. You know what I mean? Like, just that scene where she finally realizes she was like on the flotating, like, whatever that was, that she was on, like, scooter, and then realizes she's like basically living in an Instagram virtual world. So there's just so much here. And I hope people listening, if you are a CFO or you are more, let's say, into programming, into Excel spreadsheeting, into creating habit trackers, Josh maybe is now your new superhero, giving you permission to be yourself. If you're not that way, and it is more innate, more power to you. But I do love the idea of it, all of us, myself included, creating more accountability. I mean, we do a pretty good job with the family meal, but I have a kid that plays at academy level and literally gets home at 10:45. It's insane, a whole long story. So it's not always possible, but that idea of trying to bake in and embed non-negotiables around attachment. I love the dad hour on Saturday. I love that you give your kids voice and choice in that, so it's not driven by you. I love the conversation about, the inputs and increasing those touch points to maximize them. I love the idea of integrating health and wellness throughout your day and not, again, creating these spaces where health doesn't exist, right? Or health only exists. And I just love everything you're doing at Havenwood. It's just awesome, man. Is there anything you want to say? Final words, and or please let people know how they can reach out to you and interface with you if they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Havenwood. Please shout that out as well.
Yeah, Thomas, I appreciate you taking the time to have me on today. This has been really fun. As far as where they can learn more about Havenwood, LinkedIn is probably your best source. I'm pretty much exclusively on LinkedIn, so follow me on LinkedIn. I share a lot about what we're doing, expansion plans, process. We love to share continuous improvements that we make. So all of my team members are expected to participate in continuous improvement every day. So we're generating somewhere between 5 and 15 incremental improvements and logging those every day at Havenwood. All of those based towards improving client care, with the ultimate idea that the only value we provide at Havenwood is changing the child's brain. So accounting and finance, that's waste. People aren't paying us at Havenwood to do accounting and finance work. So we do incremental and continuous improvements so that we can do as little accounting and finance as possible while still supporting the customer journey and healing the traumatized brain. So check us out on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. As far as just last thing that I had, I loved that you brought up getting up early on vacation and knocking out a little bit of work. This is a topic people don't, it's almost like they don't dare talk about this because it's so taboo to work on vacation. And I think it's a false dichotomy. Yes, you shouldn't go on vacation and work the entire time. Agreed. And yet, if you're a business owner, you might not have any other choice. And so it's better that you go on vacation and make sure things are calibrated every day. So I do the exact same thing. I get up a little bit early, or right before I go to bed, I'll jump on my laptop, clean up my emails, get back to zero inbox. Because for me, it's either done or it's snoozed until the day I can complete the project. If there's anything important and urgent, it's done that day. I don't build up a to-do list. If you don't think you have time to do it now, you're not going to have time to do it later. So I'm a big fan of just take care of things in real time. Don't let stuff accumulate. And but we shouldn't have. I agree with you. There's healthy shame. Don't have shame around maintaining the infrastructure of your life, even while you're on vacation, because again, like it's about creating a sustainable system that you don't need to escape from. And for me, I don't want to go on vacation and feel like I need to escape from vacation because I know my life is crumbling back home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so much here, man. I cannot thank you enough. The thing I love, even though we talked about work-life integration, I need better systems to evaluate my efficacy as a dad. And I do have a lot of things already built in. I don't have the exact dad hour, so I'm going to totally steal that. I love that, where again, it lets my kids, I definitely engage my kids, solicit their worldview. I actually just made a video the other day on Instagram of me trying to pogo stick, and it was horrible. Do not try to pogo stick at 45. It should come with a warning that says that. Yeah, that thing is like a death trap. But that was me joining with my son who was pogo sticking, and I'm like, all right, let's go. So I love being the, not being the pro. I love allowing my kids to be the expert as well. But I love that you're just giving yourself permission, and everyone listening, again, to build systems that allow them to be more relational, to optimize attachment. And in the long term, the ROI of that attachment, whether your kid is 2, 4, 7, or 16, is a healthier child, a healthier family. and more often than not, decreasing mental health, sending that to the background and sending wellness forward. So thank you so much. I so appreciate everything you're doing. I love the way you're leading at Havenwood. I love the way everything, again, is about maximizing the customer experience for these girls that absolutely deserve unsurpassed treatment experience. And if anyone has a teenage daughter, obviously, and wants to learn more about Havenwood, check that out. In the show notes, I will have your LinkedIn account, as well as I'll drop Havenwood's website as well in there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And for anybody listening, please head over to fourpeaksparents.com if you want to sign up for the newsletter and learn more about how that program can obviously help you immediately make a positive shift in your family dynamics and help your kids to be more resilient and healthy. All right, take care. Be well, everybody.
Hey everyone, Thomas here. First off, it means the world to me that you took the time to listen to my podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to receive the latest podcast updates, as well as expert parenting tips and practical strategies for navigating your tween, teen, or young adults challenges directly to your inbox, then sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. And most importantly, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, stuck, stressed, and are losing sleep because you're constantly worried about your tween, teen, or young adult, your first step is to realize that you still have a choice and can do something about it. I'm ready to help you take action and create the results you desire today. Just go to fourpeaksparents.com and book a free strategy call. Let's do this. Last thing, while you were listening to this show, who was the one person that you thought could really benefit from hearing it? Please share it with them.